Hello, everyone. Here we are, Schmidtless Live. So I'm really excited today because I've got one of my great friends, Leilani Bloomquist, is going to be joining us. We're going to talk a little bit about her career and what she's doing now, which I think is really interesting because I've been doing a lot of career coaching over the past few months, and I'm getting more and more people that have been asking about, should I look into consulting? Should I look into making that move? And so I want to talk to Leilani about her experience with it, but also the type of work she's doing because it is transformational work. And I think all of us want to be transformational in our organizations. So, hearing about the things that she's found success with, I think is going to be really great. Before I get started, though, I have to, pay the bills, obviously. So Foundry, we are hiring. We're looking for developers, so you can check out foundrymakes.com/careers. But we're always interested in really interesting people. We're growing quickly, so I'd love to hear from you. If you have any comments or questions during the show, go ahead and post them. We'll try to get to them, and we'll do our best. Okay, that's all I can promise. So I want to jump right in and say hi to Leilani. Leilani, how are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. I'm so excited. So one thing you and I have in common is we got a lot of our start in technology and design and project management.
Yes.
And, for you specifically, because you've worked in so many transformational roles, areas where people are wanting change, people are wanting innovation, how have those project management skills sort of helped you in those ways? Is it really just being able to manage expectations, or is it the processes? What's helped you in the past, moving from project management into sort of innovation and transformational work?
Great question. I usually tell almost everyone that I talk to that project management skills are foundational for almost every single aspect of your career, regardless of what direction you're going to take it, whether you're working in transformation or innovation, just staying in the project management track, which is a fantastic career path as well, or even moving into like the marketing side of the house. And there's a really great craft around being able to clearly communicate and connect and manage stakeholders, manage expectations. Of course, timelines and budgets are critical across the board, regardless.
Yep.
um, Exercises in prioritization. It's something that I do every single day with my clients, with myself personally, with
Right.
with my career, et cetera. There's just so many foundational pieces within that. And then also really learning to frame up more of those open-ended questions to making sure that you're asking the right questions around what problem are we really trying to solve and anchoring back to that high level. And then also understanding the connection, which this is where we kind of tie in the project management and some of the design process as well, but really tying it back to the value to the end consumer that you're trying to serve, and also understanding the value to the business, and speaking some of the language of business, which sometimes can get lost in the creative or innovative
Yeah.
space, but that's where the value comes in, is kind of tying it back. So those are just a few of the key skills. But my goodness, I feel like I use project management in work and personal end to end on a daily basis.
Well, sure. Yeah. I mean, in some regards, we're all project managers, right? But I think, I hear people talking to me about wanting to get into strategy and they want to get in innovation. And sounding from what you have, and similar to coaching I've done, is that it's not necessarily just this leap you make. It is a transition for yourself, right? And acquiring some of those foundational skills that'll serve you better when you're into those strategic roles, when you're or get those opportunities, right? Did you find that to be similar sort of path for you?
Yes. I found that one, there's not educational programs out there to be like, I'm going to go get a master's degree in innovation. The Stanford Design School has some amazing classes and programs that really talk, and connect to human-centered design and
And expensive.
thinking. They can be really expensive. More often than not, these are foundational skills that are learned as you're doing. And so having the opportunities to be embedded with the team, to be supporting those teams, can be great opportunities to start to stair step into that career path and gain some of the knowledge, the expertise, the skills, even just understanding some of those processes. I feel like I've been incredibly fortunate throughout my career to work with really brilliantly talented people that I get to learn from on a daily basis. So it's not necessarily all that I bring to the table. Sometimes it's also just knowing the right people to pull into the conversation and to lean on, because we're better as a group and as a whole. It's just one person having it all. And so, yes, I will always tell people, like, if you can, get into a great team and a great culture, because you're going to learn so much, and it's really going to help you leapfrog and get where you want to go, and also help you figure out where you want to go. Because sometimes you come in with an idea of, I want to go down this career track. And once you get into that team, you actually maybe pivot a little bit, and find some little surprises along the way.
That's smart. That's great advice, Leilani. And so jumping into kind of our main topic I wanted to talk about was, you've worked in corporations, big and small, for a number of years, and then recently this year decided to kind of make the move into consulting, into kind of your own kind of master of your own domain, as it were. And what were some of the points that came along that decision making process that helped you make that move? Because like I mentioned, I've been doing a lot of career coaching, especially since COVID has put so many people out of work. And a lot of people are questioning, okay, well, maybe I got laid off from this organization. Does it make sense for me to go back and find another organization, similar size, similar role, similar things? Or should I make the move into consulting, which is something I've always felt really passionate or interested in? But maybe I just don't have the confidence. Maybe, I know personally when I got into consulting early in my career, I stacked up so many negatives about myself, and things that would obviously make it impossible for me to do it, because I was looking at other people doing it and saying, well, I'm not them. I don't have their network. I don't have their background. No. Basically telling myself, no. So, I'm guessing, you're a human being, Leilani, which I'm pretty confident in saying that, and that you have feelings like that as well as everybody else does. So what was some of the things that happened as you went through that decision-making process? What were some of the challenges you found, and how did you overcome them to kind of be in the successful place that you are now?
I love that you talk about a little bit of the negative self-talk and self-sabotage, because we all are human and do it. I just had a conversation yesterday morning with someone, and I said, just be really careful about the words that you say to yourself, because they will become your truth. And my goodness, the journey to making the step into independent consulting for me was about 5 years long. And that's not to say that that's the time track that should be for anyone else, but it's something that had been on my radar for a while, and I was really interested in. I was interested in the opportunity to be able to work with more of a variety of clients, really kind of control a little bit more and be able to choose the type of projects and clients that I wanted to work with. And it just seemed really appealing to work in more of that consultative fashion. I did a little bit of soul searching and digging deep and getting really comfortable with owning the fact that I am not going to be the person that will ever find joy in the run the business type of work. I'm a builder. I'm an activator. I like to be at the front, digging into really meaty problems, and like on the building side of building teams and understanding what we should focus on from a product standpoint. And it took me a little while, candidly, to be really comfortable just saying that out loud and owning it. There was also some financial pieces, which, let's face it, are really, really real factors. And for me, having a financial cushion and having a lot of really candid conversations with my husband and our family, what we were comfortable with. The funny thing is, my husband was really comfortable and ready for me to make that jump before I was. And he was my cheerleader, and he's like, do it. You're going to be great. Let's go. And I just personally, it took me a little bit longer. And I feel like everyone's journey, more often than not, is exactly what it should be. And I'm glad that I made the change when I did. But I would say definitely take a peek at finances. That can be a big part of it overall. having a little bit of a buffer, because even if you get your contract right out of the gate, there's delays in you actually billing those hours versus those invoices getting processed versus
Right.
the money coming in. And like the financial side is a really big impact of it. Really doing some research and doing due diligence on insurance. My husband and I are both consultants, and traditionally I held all of our benefits through corporate.
Mm.
And so being thoughtful about what that looked like. And for me, I'm a researcher. So I put
Hmm.
a lot of research into that aspect of it, kind of budgeting and timeline. And then when I finally did choose to move forward with it, there go the project management skills. I literally made a list, and I have a whiteboard in my office, and I use sticky notes all the time. And for me, this is how I manage my own processes. And I started to project manage myself through the process of what I needed to do to stand up my LLC, to set up my business bank accounts, to work through my website. And I managed my website like a project, even though it was my own personally, and pulling in some really fantastic designers and copywriters in my network to help me with that.
Mm.
And more importantly, I would say it out loud. Like, say your goals out loud. I read a book recently, and one of the stories in the book stood out and resonated so deeply with me. And her name is Kristen Kuzmak. She's a speaker and fantastic if you want a fun book to read. And with her children, and for every single birthday, their rule is that they have to say their wish out loud, like shout it from the mountaintops. Like, and her theory is like, why would you ever keep your wish inside in secret? We can't help you attain it. We can't help you. And so what I would tell you is like, if that's a wish and a desire, say it out loud,
Mm.
because it might not be the moment today. But if you don't say it out loud, you won't realize how many people are actually really supportive and championing for you and willing to make those connections and willing to help give you advice and give you some coaching and mentoring, because we've all been there. And for me, once I started to say it out loud, one, it was really reassuring to get the positive feedback of people, and yourself included. You're like, awesome. I had other people giving me really great advice on how they budget and manage even their finances coming through, which was really like Kelly Williams was a really fantastic person for me to talk to. And
Mm.
she was really transparent about the budgets and how she sets up and manages her money, which was really insightful. And all throughout that progress, the more I said it out loud, the more I found that I had a huge network that was excited to support me and champion for me and introduce me to other people and help me along the way. So I would say if that is a goal, just start to
Yeah,
say it loud.
that's
um,
great. Well, you talked about nomenclature being an important part of making this transition because I agree. You've got to kind of put the suit on and give it a try and walk around it and talk about it. But I think one of the things that people really struggle with, and maybe this is a Minnesota thing, or I don't know, or just a human thing, but people have a hard time asking for that help. Why does this person doesn't owe me anything? Why would they help me? Again, these are thoughts that come up in your head where you're kind of you're fighting against yourself, right? You've got this experience, you've got this value you can deliver to people, but then again, you can hold yourself back because you're saying no for other people, right?
Mhm.
And you know when you were going through that process, obviously you've spent you and I've talked. You spend a lot of time researching, reading, doing all these different things. Was there certain outlets that really helped kind of make that brain transition for you from that, oh, could I, should I, would I, to, yeah, no, it's going to be a thing? What outside resources? Because I see people so many times lean on their network, or they go and they take a Udemy course, or they read all the Malcolm Gladwell books, or something. And I get so many people asking, like, where should I start, right? And what I hear you saying is like you got to start with how you're talking about it, right?
Mhm. Yeah. Um, Initially, I started with just a core group of trusted people. And I also did an exercise, a mind mapping exercise. And so there's a lot of free tools online that you can actually do a mapping exercise, but it just starts with like a central idea. And it's a really great practice to take a physical piece of paper and just a pen or a bunch of colored pencils and markers, make it as creative as you want. and start to get things out of your head. And the mind mapping exercise that I did was around the content on my website, what I wanted to say and how I wanted to position myself.
Mm-hmm.
Me, it was me solidifying how I talked about myself, how I positioned my strengths, how I really focused on what I enjoy doing and what gives me joy. And when I focus on the work that gives me joy, I know I'm performing at my peak for my clients as well.
Mm.
And it was just a really healthy exercise because the more I did it, the more I realized like I want to focus more here and less here.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable saying this in this way. And I will say just the practice of doing it over and over and physically saying it out loud and getting some feedback from people around, do you understand this? Does this make sense? Can I say this more clearly or use more simplified human terminology when I'm trying to describe it? Innovation and transformation, we work with people across the gamut on skill sets. So you can't be speaking a language that only people in the innovation space actually understand. And so for me, the mind mapping exercise was actually, so it wasn't reading a book and it wasn't taking a class. I will also caveat that with, I'm a big proponent of personality tests. The thinking preferences exercise that I did early on in my people leadership career was a huge pivot moment for me. It was like a spark moment where it was the first time I'd seen myself written down on words on a piece of paper, like my strengths and my skills that I always kind of thought that I had. But it was, for me, it was really reaffirming to see it. And so I think figuring out what those tools are that help you solidify and reinforce your strengths and your natural skills. I'm also a big believer in understanding your weaknesses and understanding how and when they come up, but I tend to not focus a ton on them, be aware and understand, complement, but I really focus on enhancing my strengths personally. So it was a few different exercises, but getting comfortable with how I position myself was actually done through the mind mapping exercise and then working with my content writer just for editing. And she actually did more minor editing and then get in front of people like yourself or some other people in my trusted kind of inner circle to say, like, does this make sense? And will you give me candid feedback on that? And being ready for candid feedback. And some of the feedback would have been like, I don't understand it. This doesn't make sense.
I don't get it.
And so be ready for that as well. And know that that feedback truly is a gift because it helps you refine and reposition yourself and like continue to tweak it. And so know that the feedback isn't there to tear you down or isn't there to say that you can't do it. It just is feedback to say, let's make it a little bit more clear and concise so you can really sell yourself and position yourself correctly where people understand and know what your skills are and why to tap into you from a resource or a leadership or support perspective.
Mm-hmm. Well, and what I'm also hearing you say is that you used the website as an anchor, sort of a place to just put down some roots and say, okay, this is going to be square one. This is where I'm going to start, is with this. And if I can get that into a good spot where I feel like I can communicate, I can explain, and I'm positioning myself in the right way, that's giving me even more confidence to get to the next level. Is that right?
Yeah, that was correct. And I was also really clear with myself that I did not expect to build a website and have leads coming in. To me, the website was a validation and a reinforcement and a sales and networking tool, both to solidify my business and my consulting as a real business, something that I was serious about, and for people to be able to have that 500-foot view of, oh, this is who Leilani is, and this is what problem she can help us solve. Mm-hmm. There was no expectation that I was going to launch a website and get leads coming in. So I knew that, again, it was a tool to help me along the way or with introductions or whatnot. And so I just want to be level set expectations on what I thought the role of my website was and is. And I'm still in that camp.
Yeah. Well, again, I go back to all the resources that are available online. It can be overwhelming because you get so many different opinions, just like you were saying. Like, people are like, well, you should write a book and you should guess SEO and you should contribute articles to online publications and you should be on LinkedIn all day every day, and you know, all these different things. It's you know, how did you weed through all these resources? Like you said, you know, you're a researcher, you enjoy that. How did you how are you able to take all these available options and sort of do a litmus test with yourself and your goals? Was it that mind mapping exercise that really kind of helped clarify? Is that what you were saying?
The mind mapping exercise helped me get really clear with communicating how I positioned myself, my business, and my skills. So that helped me almost kind of refining that elevator speech and getting really clear and concise in more of a simplified English overall. And then, so I did a paper version of the mind map, and then I actually uploaded it into the tool. So there's free mind mapping tools, and that tool I use to send the information to my website designer and my copywriter. So we just had a digital version to easily connect because we're all remote. And this was even pre-COVID, we were all remote. And so that was a good tool for me to use in that exercise. The one thing that has become really clear, especially in the last 3 to 5 years, to me, so pre-COVID, was how valuable networking and the local community is. We are a big little city in the Twin City Metro, and there is barely 1 degree of separation in between. And so to me, it was more important to have valuable conversations. And then when I talk about saying it out loud, the more that I told people what my intention was, and the more that I was very clear and concise in asking if they're like, because so many people would be like, great, let me know how I can help. And then normally that's the end of the conversation.
Right.
And so just getting really clear and concise to say, these are the type of people that I want to meet with. These are the types of people that would actually be my best contacts. So if you have anyone in your network that fits this, I would love an introduction and I would really appreciate it. And really just getting that clear and concise. It was like 2 sentences. And if I could tell them what types of titles or roles the people were in, and for me, I continue to anchor to, I'm industry agnostic. I'm really representing digital and the end consumer, which at the end of the day, end consumers, and they don't look at verticals. Like we categorize ourselves as verticals from a company perspective, but consumers don't look at it as like, I'm going to engage with a healthcare or a financial services vertical today. And so I took, because I got that question a lot of like, oh, what companies and what verticals? And for me, it wasn't about company size. It wasn't about whether they were Fortune 100 or 500. It was about, do you have these types of roles with these types of titles? Because that aligns to the type of work and transformation and efforts where I can play a really great role and be a benefit to them. And our skills fit together quite well. So I had to take a little bit of time as I kept hearing that question come up earlier on. And so it was a little bit of introspection and thinking through it. And what I would say is, if you don't know that off the bat, enlist a couple people that can help you define that, because people will ask, but you need to be able to have an answer for them. Yeah. And so I spent most of my time not reading books. And yes, I met with our accountant and set up all like the logistics for the business and figured out all of that fun stuff. But it was really spending the bulk of my time having really intentional conversations with people.
Yeah, I think that's really smart because so many people I hear talk about how much they hate networking, and usually my response is, well, you're just really bad at networking. The reason why you don't like it is because you're not doing it correctly. And a big part is exactly what you just said, Leilani, which is having a goal, having an outcome you're looking to achieve, right? And whether that is either or both, looking to find what value you can provide to people and what value people can provide to you. Because if you don't know what those goals are, you're kind of wasting the other person's time, right? I mean, and that's why what I see is that people can feel that is that when people are like, oh, let me know how I can help. And you're like, cool, bye. And you're like, man, this event was not that great and I didn't get that much out of it. And it's like, well, yeah, because you didn't provide anything of value to other people. And sometimes providing things of value to people is not necessarily, here, I can give you these contacts or I can give you these clients or things. It could just be being able to express to them, hey, I'm someone good to have in your network that you could pull out because here's the problems I solve. And so if you run into that problem, here's the problems I solve and the people that I solve them for. Exactly to your point, right? And if you don't have that sort of script down to make it easy for other people to translate it, not that you want people to sell you, you want to be able to sell yourself. Nobody can do that better than you can, but you want to give them enough that at least gets somebody interested in getting the contact.
Definitely. And I had quite a few conversations along the way, and I met with some amazing, fantastically talented people. And more often than not, if there wasn't necessarily a net opportunity for that relationship, more often than not, they were more than willing to introduce me to someone else. Or there were times that I was like, the work that you're doing isn't necessarily aligned to me, but I actually have someone in my network that I would love to introduce you to. And being willing to play that connector role, or just saying, wow, the work you're doing is fantastic and I'd love to stay connected. It's a not now, but like everything, we turned the corner and we're in the middle of a pandemic, and no one anticipated that from this year. And so things change quickly.
They do.
Markets change, projects change, priorities change really quickly, as we've all seen so far in 2020. And being willing to sit in those conversations and be clear and concise about what you can offer, what you want to focus on, and also just being willing to make that connection and or say, just thank you for your time, and can we stay connected for the future?
So in the last part, I want to talk to you about, Leilani, is about being that consultant and working in those organizations. When you made the transition from a full-time person where, your role's pretty established, there's a title, there's all these things, and you just go in and you get, you get in the boat with everybody else and start rowing, right? But as a consultant, you're kind of coming in from the side, and what have you found successful in being that person that kind of comes in from the outside, and being able to have the impact that you might have had as a full-time person? What are some of the work that you do? Do you go back to what you had talked about? You lean on that research side of things. What are some of the first things you do to come in and start? Because that's the problem I've seen with other people in their headspaces. They're like, well, at this place, I have a job description, so that makes it easy, right? I can just come in and tick all the boxes, right? But as a consultant, well, that's a little amorphous, and I don't have a job description, and I don't know if I can provide value. I mean, I feel like I can provide value, but I don't have a check boxes like I do with a job description at a full-time place. So you get where I'm going with that?
Yes. Yeah. It's definitely, there's a little bit more gray space. And I think one of the core reasons why people bring consultants in is because they expect you to hit the ground running and really start performing right out of the gate, in a lot of times. And so I find my general approach is to get in, and I'm a content consumer. So as much information as I can gather from them and consume myself, and then I'll start to ask questions around, who are my key people that I should meet with right out of the gate and start to get to know and
who to know, right? Tell me who the players are, right?
Who are they? Like, who are going to be my core people that I'm going to be able to turn to or lean on, or know where to get what information from, and spending some of that time just getting to know them as people and understanding what they love and where they enjoy spending their time, and how long they've been at the company and what their area of expertise is, et cetera. So I want to make sure that they feel heard and seen and valued, because there is so much value in the full-time associates and employees that I have the opportunity to engage with. And then also helping them understand like what my role is. And at times my answer is, I actually don't know what this looks like, but we're going to figure out together.
I love that you just said that, because I think that's some of the most successful consultants, and where people get stuck is because they're like, well, I have to come in and prove my value. And like, your value is to come in and figure out what other people are doing. So your value is not to come in and talk about how great you are at all. Your value is to come in and figure out, what are you doing? And just being a good listener. Like, right away, you can start to provide value with folks, and not feel like, well, if I don't have some analytics and spreadsheet done by the end of the week, they're going to see through me and not that I don't know anything, right? I mean, they're expecting you to have ramp up time as a consultant, right?
Yes. Yeah. Everyone has that expectations. And what I would say is some of the best opportunities to walk into as a consultant is having even just a checklist or a spreadsheet of like, here's a list of people you should meet with. And here's some high level, like even one sentence about each of the individuals and like go. And then it's up to you as a consultant to schedule those meetings and frame up the conversations. And people like to talk about themselves.
Sure.
It's a great opportunity just to connect on a human level and break down some of those barriers. And you learn so much along the way. Every single conversation I have, I learn, which is great. And it's information and feedback that I can bring into the projects or the work that we're going to be collaborating on.
Yeah. Well, and again, back to that networking piece. I mean, that's the value of doing that work too, because you're doing the same thing you would be outside networking, right? So it's a skill set that over time, the only way to get good at it is do it, right? There's no I'm sure there's tons of formulas and even apps and books and different things about it, but to your point, this is definitely a jump into the deep end sort of experience. And I think that's where the scariness comes from for people, is because what if I jump in and I can't swim, right? But again, it's like, well, you never know until you actually do it, right? But what I'm taking away from what you're saying, Leilani, is that, a great place to start is obviously building that network, doing those mind mapping exercises to figure out what is some of the value you can create by first understanding what do you like to do, right? What are you good at, and then figuring out where those opportunities are. So let me ask you one more question, because I think that's where other people will stumble, is like, well, where do I find clients? Where do I find my first clients, right?
Yeah.
And I think as consultants, I think that's something we're always asking ourselves. I don't think there's ever just an answer for that, right? But did you have those, you talked about like the budgeting and the process of kind of getting the business side of it down. And I'm guessing, being a consultant is somewhat, have to be, but I've heard people say like, well, I can do this stuff, but I'm not a salesperson. What advice would you give those people?
There are a lot of really amazing agencies that we have in the metro area. Staffing agencies and talent agencies. For instance, like if it's something that you want to be independent, but you want someone else to help with that sales and like the business development side.
Yeah, that's what I want.
Right? Exactly. From like horizontal talent, horizontal integration, from antenna, from AIM consultant to ambient to, there's a whole plethora. So you can do some research and figure out what staffing agencies and consultant firms focus in on what area, and even just make a list of like, these are my top 5 or 7, and start having conversations with them as well, because they're also looking at having consultants on their roster that they can sell into clients. And sometimes they have an in on conversations that you may never be privy to have, because they have a whole team that are dedicated to networking and being embedded with all of these different companies. And so it doesn't always have to be yourself. Yeah. Now, if you're a master networker and you have a great network and that's something that you get excited by as the sales and biz dev process, like fantastic. There's a great opportunity for you to do that just yourself and independent. And there's also a pretty easy way to have core foundational relationships with some of those firms, because what I would always say is there's also opportunities to be a pass-through. And for a lot of, sometimes even companies and managers and sometimes consultants don't even know what the pass-through is. And one of the biggest hurdles at times of getting into an enterprise is getting through the procurement process and getting approved as a vendor. Right. And so being able to have a relationship with some of these different staffing or consulting agencies, and even just a pass-through standpoint, you can still keep your rate pretty close or at what you want. They have a smaller markup on top, and then you're able to use their legal master services agreements, et cetera, to be able to work with that client. So for me, that was a big part of problem solving for my client. If they're like, we'd love to work with you, but like, you were never going to get through procurement.
Right.
I'm like, that's great. Who do you have? Because I can be a pass through other vendors and like, let me solve that problem for you before it's even a problem. Like, let's not let that be a hurdle. And so as much as possible, I try and help remove barriers before they're present and problem solve from the get go. And so I would encourage most consultants to, at least at a high level, have some of those core relationships.
That's awesome. Well, so if I want to know more about Leilani and the work you do, where are you most active? Where should I check out the work that you're doing if I want to reach out?
If you want to reach out, the easiest place to find me is on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on there. My personal page and business page, Leilani Bloomquist Consulting, are up on LinkedIn. My website's up and running as well, but from a social network, LinkedIn is the easiest place to reach me.
Cool. Well, Leilani, thank you so much for joining me. I always enjoy our conversations. I always learn so much from you, and I just appreciate it. I'm really proud of the work you're doing. And yeah, I'm just really glad that I got to share this, your perspective with the audience today.
Thank you so much for having me. I've always appreciated the advice and the camaraderie and a lot of the laughs along the way too. So
Yeah, well, you and I could do a live show for days. I think we could just go on and on and on.
yes.
But I know we got to get back to work, some of us. So, okay. Thank you again, Leilani. I'm going to close the show out here by just reminding everybody that we are hiring at Foundry Makes. So check out foundrymakes.com. And if you like the video, please make sure you subscribe to the channel, and you can delicately press that like button. You don't have to smash it. And if you like this, we're going to have more conversations next week and the coming weeks around how to build your career, how to find those jobs. So if you're out there and you've been laid off because of COVID, or you're having other issues in climbing the ladder inside the organization, this is where we're going to be having a lot of those discussions. So thank you for joining me again today. I really appreciate it. And have a great weekend, and we'll talk again soon.